Welcome to the game of the week for game week 2, and we've got Chelsea versus Liverpool for you guys. Two teams who won their first game of the week, and if you think about it, the first game with two teams with title aspirations. Will we get that touchline fracas that we got between Lampard and Klopp? I am so looking forward to it.
You know what? I was kind of hoping that I was going to get a little bit more insight from that mini season that was played to conclude the Premier League, like with players talking to each other without fans being there. But that little Lampard and Klopp coming together, that would have made up for it for me.
This is the insights I want to see. I want to see Mourinho take on absolutely everyone in the future. So
I'm pretty sure Lampard was a few words away from grabbing his dick while shouting at Klopp.
Why?
Just a show of power. It's like, look at this Premier League winning.
I've got 3 Premier Leagues.
I've got it, yeah. He's got the medals wrapped around there constantly.
Other than showing their phallus, what do you think is going on at Chelsea, and how do you think they'll look going into this game?
So they're currently third in a very premature Premier League with only one game being played. That one game being a 3-1 win against Brighton. Now, I have to say, I don't think they played particularly well. But as you said, they do have title aspirations. And I think one trait you do need to have is picking up points when you don't play particularly well. So all things said, 3 points is 3 points. I also think it gives Lampard an opportunity to have a look at his team, see where the weaknesses are and try to improve on that going forward.
Yeah, for Liverpool, it was a win's a win, I guess, at the end of the day. But conceding 3 at home is quite a concern for them. I think in key moments they were very sloppy defensively, which is why they conceded 3 goals. And you see some of those goals, a lot of errors leading to those goals. So they'll be very keen to try and stamp that out against, a Chelsea team, which will be a lot sterner test.
I do wonder if both teams will look at that and just be like, okay, first game of the season, it can be a little bit sloppy. Teams aren't up to speed. But if maybe they could sweep that one under the carpet and just say, all right, that's the fuck ups out of the way. Let's get on with the season.
Anyway, let's get into it. And one thing we like to do here is get into the stats. So we're going to get into the stats for Chelsea versus Liverpool. Usually we have the stats for the season, but as only one game has gone by, these are the stats from their previous game. Alex, what kind of jumps off of the page in terms of Chelsea and their stats?
I think what the first thing they do is they echo a little bit what we were talking about earlier. As you know, Chelsea scored 3 goals against Brighton, but their expected goals was 1.27. So that means they scored almost double the amount of goals than they were actually expected to score. And when you look at those goals, excluding the penalty, you've got that deflection for the Zuma goal, and you've also got that absolute laser of a shot from Reece James. Now, what might concern Lampard a little bit is that expected goals conceded of 1.44. Of the 16 teams that played in the first game week, that is the 6th highest. But at the moment, I think it's a bit too early for alarm bells to be ringing in Lampard's head. It was the first game of the season. I think he'll be hoping that over the next few weeks, he and the players can get those issues down.
Yeah, and for Liverpool, they got the win, but I guess the underlying stats that might worry Liverpool is sort of the average possession. It's very rare that Liverpool will lose the average possession battle, especially at Anfield. But more worryingly, we have the passing accuracy at 75.9%, which is way below their average last season, which was 84.3%, which was the 3rd highest in the Premier League. So a lot of passes that went astray, they absolutely cannot afford that against a Chelsea side which has got a lot of quality and will try to keep the ball just as well. Injuries and suspensions, how are Chelsea lining up for this game?
So there's a slim chance that Werner and Pulisic might not be fit for the game, but they should be. Thiago Silva, he's currently injury free, but just lacks a lot of match practice, so he's probably a bit too early for him for this game. And then Chelsea are without Ziyech, Chilwell and Gilmour. They have all officially been ruled out.
For Liverpool, they've got a couple of players who may miss out. Tsimikas, the left back, he tested positive for COVID, but he's back training, so he might be a bit short for the game. for a game of that intensity. Shaqiri as well, he's got a muscle injury as well, so I don't know if he's really been training, so he might be short for the game. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, he's suffering a knee injury, which he'll be out for the first couple of weeks of the season, so he's definitely out for the game against Chelsea.
So with the injury news and suspensions out the way, that takes us nicely to the predicted lineups. I'm going to go first with my Chelsea lineup. I'm going for a 5-2-3. Or you could call it a 3-4-3. It depends which way you look at it. In goal, I have Kepa. He will be starting, which is a sentence I think a lot of Chelsea fans will be hoping will no longer be said going forward. Reece James at right back.
Yep.
The three centre-backs being Azpilicueta, Zuma and Christensen, and left back Alonso. The central midfield pairing will be Jorginho and Kovacic. He's back from his suspension that he had against Brighton. And I think against Brighton, you saw what Chelsea actually missed in Kovacic, who was their player of the season last season.
Yeah, he's definitely that type of player that can recycle the ball but kind of drive a bit forward better than Jorginho.
Yeah, 100%. On the right, there will be Mount, and on the left, Havertz. Although there is a possibility they will probably swap flanks throughout the game. And then up top, we have Werner, who, as I mentioned earlier, there's a slim chance he might not make it due to a dead leg, but I think he will slot in.
For Liverpool, Alisson starts in goal, the undisputed number one. Did have a few errors leading to goals against Leeds. Trent Alexander-Arnold, definitely in. Andrew Robertson definitely in for the fullbacks, and going with Gomez and Van Dijk, that doesn't really change. And I'm having Naby Keita keep his place. He did have a decent performance. He was quite strong. He recovered the ball well. Jordan Henderson, he didn't really have a good game, but it seemed like he was short of match fitness. So I'm hoping.
I mean, he didn't have any pre-season, so
yeah, exactly.
I think they knew that was probably going to be the case for Henderson, to be fair.
So hopefully he can hit the ground a bit better against Chelsea. And then we'll have Wijnaldum as well. That completes the midfield three. And, the lethal strike force of Sadio Mane on the left, Mohamed Salah on the right, and Firmino up top rounds it off.
Yeah, most of that team picks itself. The biggest surprise for me is you didn't find any room for Fabinho.
I feel like I think he'll leave Fabinho out. I think Naby Keita is the more dynamic and athletic of the two. Fabinho kind of feels like he's the odd one out now, especially now they're signing Thiago, which is going to add a bit more competition to that midfield. I think they'll just continue with that three that started against Leeds and see how that progresses before chopping and changing, because they're still unbeaten.
And obviously they have Thiago coming in, so more problems for Klopp to try and work out. So now we've gone through the predicted lineups, let's get into the tactical analysis and how they win. Now for my one, I've gone for a 5-2-3, but that's not without reason. I rewatched the 5-3 that they played last season, and I think actually Chelsea played a little bit better than Liverpool. I just think Liverpool were more clinical, and that's backed up in the stats. Liverpool for that game got an XG of 1.45 compared to Chelsea's 2.38. But let's get into the analysis and let's open the tactical pad. I think if Chelsea can actually replicate how they performed in the last game, I think they stand a really good chance of winning. Defensively, what will be really important is that both Havertz and Mount both pull their weight. When Chelsea are defending, they're going to have to come in deep and go narrow to try and compensate for Liverpool's extra man in midfield. They're also going to have a very high workload. The reason why is they're going to have to mark both the centre mid of Liverpool and the fullbacks of Liverpool, so they're going to have to be marking two players. What this 5-2-3 formation also allows for is fluidity. If Chelsea do find themselves behind, they can switch to a 4-3-3 with Alonso bombing forward, which is a much more aggressive formation, and allow them to try and attack even more aggressively. Offensively, what will be really important for Chelsea is that the fullbacks do try and get forward where they can and support the attacking midfielders. The attacking midfielders in turn will be trying to get those runs in behind the Liverpool defensive line to try and really hurt Liverpool.
Now for Liverpool, will be interesting against this 3-4-3 or 5-2-3. I think what they will try to do is essentially get Salah and Mane, who are the most dangerous wingers in the Premier League. Can they really pin back Alonso and Reece James far back onto wide left and right? And try their best to absolutely overload this central midfield right here. Can you do a 4-on-2, or even if Chelsea want to risk it, Christensen or Zuma, will they push on Firmino? And that kind of leaves all the space in behind here. So I think Alexander-Arnold has the beating of Havertz and Robinson and Mount on the other side as well. So if they come in and pinch in, that leaves gaps for the fullbacks to go wide over, and Salah and Mane to cut through and go straight in on goal. So it'll be interesting. And at the same time, Werner is very tricky on the counter attack. So I think having Henderson there, being able to track back and kind of like boxing him in here just so they can stop the counter attack will be very, very important.
Do you know what I liked last time is that throughout the game, literally throughout the whole 90 minutes, you can see the managers constantly making little tweaks to try and counter each other. So I'm really hoping we get the same style of really tactical, like a real tactical battle that we got last time.
Yeah, and Liverpool were definitely good at making Chelsea go long, and they had Giroud up front who is good in the air, but if they start going long to Werner, I think Liverpool are going to mop that up all day. So, score predictions, let's get into it. This is going to be a feisty game. The tactical battle between Frank Lampard and Klopp was very interesting last season. What do you think is going to be the score?
Now, I know I just went through how I think Chelsea would win, so it feels like I'm going back on everything I've just said, but I do think Liverpool are a little bit further ahead of Chelsea. I think Chelsea have got a lot of new players which they need to integrate into the team. I think both teams are going to go at each other, and I think they could both hurt each other. But I think Liverpool have just got that edge in team chemistry, and they looked a bit more ready for the season than Chelsea based on the first game. So for that reason, I'm going 3-2 Liverpool.
That's my score. You stole my score prediction, as you always seem to do.
Wait, how do I steal it like before you've said it? Explain that.
Because you looked at my cheat sheet just before. That's probably how.
The cheat sheet that's caused you to lose so far.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a goal glut as well. I think, yeah, the last game week, both teams had errors leading to goals. And I don't know, I just feel that the Chelsea backline is not super strong, and they will probably be the weaker of the defenses. So I'm going with a 3-2 win for Liverpool too.
Okay, well, that is it for our game week. For